What if writing wasn't something to dread, but something that you actually looked forward to? Hey, co-authors. In this episode, we're going to explore the often overlooked joys of academic writing. We're going to uncover 3 powerful ways that researchers can find meaning, motivation, even, dare I say, delight in the writing process. From discovery and curiosity, to community and sharing, to the deep satisfaction of publication and recognition. So let's dive in. So this past semester, I'm walking down the hallway and I see one of my students, let's call her Cindy. She's my advisee, so she's working on her thesis right now. Brilliant person, great topic. But she's walking down the hallway and I think, okay, maybe this is a time to check in, because as brilliant as I have found Cindy to be in classes, she is about 2 weeks overdue on her draft of her prospectus. She says she's doing fine. I'm like, oh, how about we go to my office and talk a little bit about how you're doing on your prospectus? So we get in my office, we start chatting a little bit, and after a couple minutes, I'm just like, hey, I've had you in classes. I've liked reading your work in those classes, and you've always been on time. So what's going on? What's the problem here? And she just looks at me and says, I've always hated how my writing sounds when I read it. I'm pretty taken aback by this because she's always been a strong writer in my classes. I've never really had a sense that she felt this way. And talking more and probing with questions, what I come to find out is that she's really built up the thesis as this sort of ultimate scholarly document in her mind. And every time that she goes to write, she starts to have doubts about what she's trying to write about and who is she to write about this thing. So she starts reading back her work and then she thinks it sounds dumb. And so then she starts reading even more literature in the hope that reading those sources are going to help her craft the perfect argument, which of course just means that she never gets out of that mode and into a writing mode. And what I started to talk with her about was, okay, we need to reframe your entire relationship to writing, right? Because if you don't like doing something, if you think that it brings you anxiety, if it makes you feel bad, just to hear your own words read back to you, you're never going to write the 60, 80, 120 pages that you need, because you're never going to be able to get beyond those feelings and into really delving into the actual content of your study. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I want to talk about how to fall back in love with the joy of writing. I think a lot of folks, whenever they talk about the writing process, they talk about it as this torturous, laborious process of working through all this material and trying to find the right thing to say and trying to please this reviewer or that editor. But I think that there's a lot of joy to be had in this work. And I think that we need to be appreciative of the fact that we are, whether you're a student or a professor, we are given this opportunity to be a part of a scholarly conversation that has preceded us by decades and will go long into the future. And that's a really cool place to be. I think should be a place that we find joy. So with that, let's dive into today's episode, which is about finding the joys of writing. Are you interested in mastering scholarly writing, developing productivity, and increasing impact, all while staying healthy? Then welcome to the Publishing Academic Research Podcast. Hi, my name is Dr. Kyle Ruddick, and I'm a full professor at the University of Northern Iowa. I've written dozens of articles, books, chapters, and essays, as well as edited some of the top journals in my discipline. I meet so many scholars who have creative, innovative, and daring ideas, but can never seem to get those projects from proposals to print. I want you to get your work in the hands of people who will read it and appreciate it. So let's get into this week's big idea. So in preparation for this episode, I sent out a survey to people in my discipline in communication studies in order to ascertain what are things that people find joyful about the process of either creating, submitting, or publishing their research. I put on my qualitative researcher hat and looked through the data to see if I could see some themes that might emerge about the things that people found joyful about the process of writing. And I want to share 3 themes that I found that I think might be helpful for you to reframe writing from this sort of negative process to one that's more positive for you. So in the first theme, a lot of the participants wrote about this idea of writing academic research as a way of learning about something. Maybe it was a novel finding that emerged from their research, or maybe they got to apply a new methodology. But whatever the case may be, a lot of folks appreciated this opportunity to gain something for themselves through this process. So one of the participants said, "To me, I appreciate writing as a thinking and learning activity and find it incredibly rewarding. I often read a bunch of papers and then start writing as a way to think through all those ideas. So I get to go through this process of finding out answers to questions I have, or even answers to questions I didn't have." This is just a really cool way of thinking about the process of writing. Oftentimes, whenever we think about writing, we think of it as an expressive activity. We think of it as, I have an idea and I need to express that to other people. But I think framing it solely as an expressive activity can sometimes get us into this dangerous place where we start thinking about, what does this person want? Or this person said that my writing was good, bad, or indifferent, and then putting way too much stock into that person's opinion. And get into this place where you start thinking too much about what other people want out of your writing or want to see in your writing. And you get into this sort of analysis paralysis where, in order for you to address what you perceive of as everything that they might say about your writing, you end up not writing anything at all. And I don't think that it's wrong to ask, what am I getting out of this writing? How is my curiosity being satisfied through this process? I think that by doing that, it might allow you then to quell the voices of all of the teachers that slapped you on the wrist for bad grammar, or reviewers who misread your work, or whoever it might be, right? And really just focus on you and what you want to get out of this process. And if you think of it that way, then writing now is a way for you to satisfy your own curiosity, your own thirst for knowledge. And as a result, all those other things become secondary, and it might become easier then for you to write, because writing is a way of doing something for yourself. So let's switch to the next theme then. A lot of the participants also wrote about this idea of finding joy in their writing through the activity of sharing their work with their colleagues, with students, with family, with friends, and that writing wasn't just for yourself and it wasn't this solitary endeavor. It was your ability to be a part of a larger community that you shared ideas with. So one of the participants said, "Sharing my work with students, knowing others may benefit from my research is one of the joys that I have in writing. I take great pride in telling my students, your professor had this essay published in name of a prestigious journal. It shows them that they're learning from an actively engaged scholar. And this is particularly important to me because I write from the region where they live, and most, like me, are first-generation college students, so I want them to see that they can accomplish their dreams." And I think that's just a really beautiful sentiment, right? That whenever we share our work with other people, whether that's in our classrooms or through social media, or send an email with the attachment to your best friend or best colleague, that's not just self-aggrandizement. That's not just preening and trying to be important. That's you wanting to share your love of knowledge and your curiosity with other people. And other people respond to that. They respond to that enthusiasm and that positive energy that you have whenever your eyes light up and you get to talk about the things that are interesting to you and that you're finding out and that you're developing through your research. And another way for you to try to reframe writing from this negative experience to this positive one is to think about how joyful you are in showing that work to other people, and how other people also invest in you whenever you are doing your best work and firing on all cylinders and showing them things that they didn't even think to investigate themselves. So the last reason that a lot of the participants talked about was they liked writing for recognition. And I know you might be thinking, oh, that's gauche, who writes for recognition, right? We write it for the love of knowledge. We write it because we're a part of this process of helping out the human condition. And yeah, we do those things, but let's all be honest with ourselves. It feels good to have your name in print. It feels good to get an acceptance for a journal article or have a grant application approved. It feels good to walk in conferences and have people go, oh yeah, that's the person who wrote this. And those things can motivate you too, right? There's nothing wrong with that as long as you're not prideful and being a jerk to people about it. You are a smart person who did smart things. We want to celebrate that in the same way that we would celebrate a person being good at a sport or playing a beautiful piece of music. You're talented. Good for you. You did something great. And so one of the participants said, I find the most joy in that moment when after you've gotten your reviews and you've made your revisions and the reviewers and the editors finally say, your paper is ready for publication. It feels so super rewarding because it signals the end of a big process that you've poured so much effort into. Research is an intensive, complex process, right? You think about all of the concepts, ideas, variables that you're accounting for. Think about the research methodology that you're having to execute, the literature that you've had to read, the interpretation that you've had to have for your results, the statistical knowledge that you had to derive your results, whatever it might be. Those are not skills that most people have. And so, walk around with a little bit of swagger whenever you complete a research project, or even whenever you're still completing it, whenever you're in the middle of doing all of that work. That's a type of labor that most people around the world can't replicate, probably don't even understand, because they just don't have the same type of training and tools that you've had to master over years or even decades in order to produce the type of work that you're producing. I think it's important for us to always remember that whenever we call something research, that means something. It's not an opinion. It's not just how I feel about something. It's the application of knowledge-generating tools that have been the foundation of our societies and our civilizations and our species moving forward and moving beyond conjecture and intuition and just the things that we want to believe to a realm where we have some sort of surety. And whenever we say, I know something, that means something. And so whenever you say, I know something about student attrition, I know something about mental health, I know something about quantum mechanics, that comes from a place of your training and expertise. And whenever you see that in print, whenever it gets presented at a conference, whenever it's disseminated and digested by other people, that is something that you should celebrate and feel good about. So as we wrap up today's episode, one of the things that I really want to drive home is how grateful we should be that we're in a place where our writing matters. It can matter to us. It can matter to the people around us. It can matter to our discipline or our departments or scholars around the world. The things that we are producing through our scholarly efforts can have effects for years or even decades. So I know that if you're a student, you might be writing a research paper, thesis, dissertation, but even if you're a professor, you're working on your research to satisfy your tenure and promotion case or whatever it might be, I just think it's important for us to move beyond this space of thinking of writing as something that's extracted from us, that it's something that we do for other people, whether that's our teachers or professors or reviewers or editors, but instead it's something that we do for ourselves that connects us to a community beyond us. So let's talk about a few things that might be helpful for you as you're working through this process of reframing writing to be a more joyous space. The first thing that I'd like for you to do is every time that you sit down to write, start off by writing 2 or 3 very short sentences about the things that you're grateful about in the process of writing. That might be you're grateful for the ability to use this new methodology or find out some new knowledge or connect with a new idea. It might just be that you're grateful that you're a couple of sentences, a couple of words closer to being done than you were whenever you started. Another thing that you can do is every time you sit down to write, take a minute and think about what's your intention for the day. What is it that you're trying to accomplish? Obviously, you're trying to finish the entire project or the whole thesis or dissertation or class paper or whatever it might be. But what's the smaller goal that's motivating you that day? Is it to write 50 words? Is it to write a paragraph? Is it to read a number of articles so that way you can start to think about your literature review? What is the smaller goal? I think that if you break down this larger project into these smaller, more manageable bites that don't seem so scary and don't seem to be so daunting, then perhaps it's easier to find some joy because you're hitting your targets, you're hitting your goals, and that feels good to know that you're doing the things that you're supposed to do. So these are just a couple of activities that I've used that people gave me. I now use them with my students or whenever I'm counseling other people about their writing process. And I've had a lot of success with them. Certainly Cindy now from the beginning has been doing much better. They're almost finished with their prospectus. We're looking forward to defending that in the fall, and I'm sure she's going to do just fine. Lastly, I'd like to encourage you to just reach out to me. Let me know, what are some rituals or habits that you do at the beginning of your writing or maybe after your writing that help you stay grounded and joyful in this work. I'd love to share those with other people. I'm always interested to know more ways that I can help other folks find their voice and write things that they're proud of and that get in the hands of other people and other people find interesting. So if you're interested in becoming a better writer, venting about a review, or just bouncing ideas off another person, you could drop me a line. I'm always available for a quick chat, and I would love the opportunity to get to know you and your passion for research. Hey writers, what's stopping your best ideas from becoming your next big publication? Brilliant ideas shouldn't die in your drafts folder. Now's the time to bridge the gap between the possible and the published. If you have the time, I'd really appreciate it if you would subscribe to the podcast, leave a positive review, assign this to your classes, or share it with a colleague. All those things help get the word out and let me know what I can do to make this podcast the best resource for you. Also, if you'd like to set up a time to chat with me about your next big idea, then you can find my information in the podcast description where you can schedule a time. So until then, keep healthy, keep writing, and don't let reviewer 2 get you down.